Welcome to the second episode of Songs for Democracy podcast. Songs for Democracy podcast explores songs furthering democratic values, reminding people why personal responsibility, vigilance, and action are key pillars of a democratic society. Democracy needs citizens to stay vigilant and responsible in order to last. When government has too much power and control over its citizenry, democracy withers away. Here we will share helpful articles about the history and value of art in politics and public discourse, as well as analyze song lyrics that focus on key democratic values from different perspectives. In today's episode, we begin with Chapter 2, The Musique Tradition, Music as Civic Education. From The Lyre and the Agora, Music, Literature, and the Politics of Ancient Greece, How Art Became the Voice of Social Change. Then we listen to an analysis of Maestro Circea's song, Liberty in Bucharest, a song that is a metaphor for the only kind of freedom that cannot be administered, branded, or revoked, the freedom to insist, in your own voice, on your own terms, that you are here and you matter and you will not be filed away. Okay, let's begin. And now, let's listen to Chapter 2, The Musique Tradition, Music as Civic Education. From The Lyre and the Agora, Music, Literature, and the Politics of Ancient Greece, How Art Became the Voice of Social Change, a comprehensive series exploring the intersection of aesthetic expression and political power. Chapter 2. The Musique Tradition, Music as Civic Education. In Athens, the education of a citizen began not with mathematics or rhetoric, but with the lyre. To understand why, we must first understand what the Greeks meant when they spoke of musique, and what they feared would happen if it were corrupted. Defining musique, more than sound. Modern readers must resist the temptation to translate musique simply as music. The term encompassed the entire domain of the muses, lyric poetry, choral song, instrumental performance, and rhythmic dance. It was the civilizing medium par excellence, the art form that, in Greek theory, transformed raw human material into cultured, morally capable citizens. Musique was distinguished from gymnastic, physical training, as its complementary opposite. Gymnastic trained the body, musique trained the soul. Together, they produced the ideal citizen, physically capable and morally refined. Plato in the Republic makes this balance central to his educational program, and in so doing he is not inventing a theory, but systematizing what Athenian society had long practiced. The instruments of musique were themselves politically charged objects. The lyre, lyra, and its larger cousin the kithara were associated with Apollo, god of order, reason, and civilization. The aulos, a double-pipe instrument more similar to an oboe than a flute, was associated with Dionysus, ecstasy, and emotional transport. These were not neutral distinctions. To argue for one instrument over another was to argue for a particular vision of what human beings fundamentally are and what political life should cultivate. The modes and their political significance. Greek music was organized through systems of scales and characteristic emotional profiles called harmoniae, often translated as modes. Each mode was associated with specific emotional and moral effects, a doctrine the Greeks called ethos theory. The harmoniae were named after regions or peoples, the Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, and Mixolydian modes, among others. The Dorian mode was regarded as the most virtuous, martial, serious, conducive to courage and self-discipline. It was the mode proper to Sparta, appropriate for warriors and citizens called to sacrifice. The Phrygian mode was associated with religious ecstasy and enthusiasm, powerful but dangerous, easily tipping into hysteria. The Lydian and Mixolydian modes were associated with lamentation and sensuous pleasure respectively, and were viewed with suspicion by moralists who feared their softening effect on civic character. Plato famously argues in the Republic for restricting musical education to the Dorian and Phrygian modes, excluding the modes of lamentation and sensuous pleasure as corrupting. This is not mere musical conservatism. It is a theory of political psychology. The sounds citizens internalize in childhood shape the emotional dispositions they bring to civic life. A city of men reared on Lydian laments will be a city of weaklings. A city of men reared on Dorian harmonies will be a city of heroes. The introduction of a new kind of music must be shunned as imperiling the whole state, since styles of music are never disturbed without affecting the most important political institutions. Plato, Republic, Book 4. Choral education and the democratic polis. The most politically significant form of musical education in Athens was not the private lyre lesson, but choral performance. The chorus, a group of citizens singing and dancing together, was the primary vehicle through which the polis educated its members in shared values, myths, and emotional orientations. Choral training began in childhood. Young Athenians, both girls and boys in appropriate contexts, learned the traditional songs of their city, the paeans sung to Apollo, the dithyrambs dedicated to Dionysus, the parthenia, maiden songs, performed at religious festivals. These were not merely religious exercises. They were civic socialization in musical form, the way a culture reproduces itself across generations. The great Athenian festivals, the Panathenaea, the City Dionysia, the Lenaea, were organized around elaborate competitions in choral and dramatic performance. Wealthy citizens called choregos were required to fund the training and costuming of choruses as a form of public service, liturgy. This remarkable institution made aesthetic production a civic obligation, binding together wealth, religious duty, artistic excellence, and democratic participation in a single institution. Terpander of Lesbos, the reformer of Greek music. Among the early figures credited with shaping Greek musical tradition into a politically conscious art form, Terpander of Lesbos, fluid 7th century BCE, occupies a position of mythic importance. Ancient sources credit him with reforming the kithara from a 4-stringed to a 7-stringed instrument, with organizing the nome, nomos, a fixed melodic form for solo kithara performance, and with establishing the primacy of the Dorian tradition in musical life. But the detail most significant for our purposes is this. Tipander was summoned to Sparta to resolve political unrest through music. Ancient writers, including Plutarch, record that when Sparta was torn by factional discord, the Delphic oracle advised calling Tipander to restore harmony. He came, performed, and the city's discord subsided. Whether or not the story is literally true, its cultural significance is unmistakable. The Greeks genuinely believed that the right music could heal political wounds that argument alone could not. Tertius of Sparta, the war poet as political weapon. Tertius, FLC, 650 BCE, is the most purely political of early Greek musicians and poets. A Spartan general or military advisor, his exact status is disputed. Tertius composed elegies and marching songs designed to inspire soldiers in the brutal Second Messenian War, in which Sparta sought to maintain its control over the enslaved Helot population of Messenia. His most famous surviving fragment, from the poem known to scholars as the Eunomia, Good Order, articulates a vision of civic virtue built on sacrifice. The finest thing a citizen can do, he insists, is to die in the front rank for his city. But this is not merely propaganda. Tertius' poetry constructs an entire moral universe in which the individual self is subordinated to the collective, in which courage is the supreme virtue, and in which shame, the social emotion, is the primary motivator of action. Tertius' poems were sung by Spartan soldiers on the march and at the symposium, drinking party. They were part of the sonic environment of the total Spartan state, the agoge educational system that produced soldiers through immersive cultural conditioning. His work demonstrates that music and poetry, properly deployed, can be instruments of state power as well as challenges to it. It is noble for a good man to fall and die fighting in the front rank for his native land. Tertius, Fragment 10. This line, simple, direct, rhythmically memorable, was designed to be sung, memorized, and internalized. It is political philosophy compressed into verse and carried in the blood.
Song Analysis. Liberty in Bucharest. From the music album Freedom in Bucharest by Maestro Cerci. Note: you can read the full lyrics of the song as well as listen to the song in its entirety and watch a music video of the song when you visit our companion website, songsfordemocracy.com. Analysis: Liberty in Bucharest, a song by Maestro Cerci. Overview: where the song Freedom in Bucharest operated as a political meditation, cold, structural, cyclical, liberty in Bucharest burns warmer and more personally. The shift from freedom to liberty in the title is not cosmetic. Freedom is often conceived as an absence, freedom from oppression. Liberty carries a more active, civic, and embodied meaning, the right to act, to choose, to belong. That distinction shapes everything about how this song is written and felt. It is angrier in its bridge, more tender in its imagery, and it ends not in exhaustion but in defiant inscription. Structure and form. The song uses a tighter verse-chorus architecture than its companion piece, with the bridge functioning as the emotional and political peak rather than a reflective detour. Notably, this song has no outro. It ends on the final chorus with forward momentum rather than trailing off into ambiguity. Where Freedom in Bucharest ended with a figure walking alone along tracks, Liberty in Bucharest ends with hands writing on walls. The trajectory moves from passive grief to active claim. The chorus also evolves across its three appearances, but unlike the companion song's increasingly bitter iterations, this one moves from lament toward declaration. By the final chorus, the tone has fundamentally changed register. Verse 1, the grammar of fear. Bread lines in the winter/gray coats/gray sky. The fragmented opening echoes the stylistic approach of the companion song. Impressionistic, percussive, image-stacked. But here the grayness is doubled. Coats and sky. The oppression is not just social. It has colonized the atmosphere itself. The natural world offers no relief. I learned to keep my questions folded up inside. This is one of the album's most precise psychological observations. Not dreams hidden in sleeves, as in the companion song, but questions. The suppression of intellectual curiosity, the most fundamental form of human liberty, is rendered as a learned behavior. Children are not born folding their questions. They are taught to. Mama said be careful walls remember more. A companion image to verse 1 of Freedom in Bucharest, where Grandma whispers don't you speak. The generational female voice recurs as the carrier of survival wisdom and of inherited fear. But the phrasing here is more unsettling. Not someone is listening, but walls remember. The surveillance is architectural, ambient, and permanent. This is a more sophisticated and paranoid formulation. Walls outlast informers. Verse 2, the betrayal of the transition. I watched the old stone statues wrapped in colored stars. A vivid image of post-communist rebranding, literally wrapping Soviet monuments in the EU flag or nationalist symbols, the same stone beneath different decorations. It's a subtle but sharp observation about how institutions launder their continuity through aesthetic renovation. They promised open borders left us counting scars. The open borders promise of EU integration is here rendered as a wound rather than a gift. The irony is precise. Borders opened, but the people who benefited most were those with capital to move freely. For those left counting scars, the borders' openness was largely the freedom to leave for low-wage work abroad. Paper rules from far away signed in foreign towns same cold eyes in velvet writing how we bow. This is the song's most pointed political stanza. Paper rules from far away evokes EU regulatory frameworks imposed from Brussels, technocratic governance experienced as a continuation of external control. Same cold eyes in velvet updates the communist apparatchik into the Eurocrat. Softer presentation, identical orientation toward power. Writing how we bow. Obedience is not just demanded but scripted and formalized. The choreography of submission changes. The submission does not. The chorus, its evolution. First appearance asterisk. First we lost him / then we found / shadows wearing different names. Him is deliberately unspecified. It could be Ceausescu, though that reading is too simple. More likely him is the familiar oppressor, the known enemy whose removal left citizens briefly liberated before the new shadows arrived. The loss of a known villain can paradoxically feel like disorientation. The shadows that replace him wear different names but cast the same darkness. Second appearance adds asterisk. Cheap champagne / expensive lies / they toast freedom on a screen / while they measure out our lives. The ceremonial nature of post-communist celebration is punctured here with devastating economy. Cheap champagne is historically accurate. The December 1989 revolution was followed by genuine popular euphoria, but the modifier cheap recontextualizes it as inadequate, hastily supplied, a prop. The champagne is cheap. The lies are expensive, meaning they cost the people who believe them enormously. Third appearance transforms asterisk. Not a slogan / not a brand / I will write it on these walls / with my trembling / stubborn hands. The chorus has become a manifesto. The narrator is no longer asking whether liberty exists. They are making it exist through the act of inscription. This is a profound shift. Writing on walls is both an act of defiance, graffiti as political speech, and a reference to revolutionary proclamation. The trembling hands are honest. This is not heroic bravado but frightened courage, which is the only real kind. The bridge, the song's political heart. The bridge in Liberty in Bucharest is more explicitly programmatic than anything in the companion song. Where the bridge of freedom in Bucharest asked asterisk, who decides my worth? Asterisk, this bridge answers with a list of demands. I want a street that speaks its mind / a vote that doesn't come with fines / a home that isn't filed and stamped. Each line represents a distinct dimension of civic liberty. Free expression, uncorrupted suffrage, and property dignity. Filed and stamped is particularly evocative. It captures the bureaucratic humiliation of having your most intimate space reduced to administrative paperwork. The truth / not just another camp. The line break on the truth gives it enormous weight before the qualifier arrives. Not just another camp is the song's most compressed historical allusion, referencing both the communist labor camps and the ideological camps, political, national, religious, that replaced them. The narrator refuses to trade one doctrinal enclosure for another. I want a sky that's really ours / not rented out by distant powers. The sky is commons, a beautiful inversion of the song's earlier atmospheric grayness. In verse 1, the sky was gray with oppression. Here, the sky becomes a symbol of collective inheritance that has been privatized and subleased by forces the people never elected. To wake one day and just feel free / not begged for / not a fee. The compression here is remarkable. Liberty should not require petition, begged for, or payment, a fee. Both framings, liberty as charity from above, liberty as commodity purchased from the market, are rejected. This is a fundamentally dignitarian conception of freedom. It is not granted, not bought, but inherent. Final chorus, declaration over lament. Liberty in Bucharest / not a slogan / not a brand / I will write it on these walls / with my trembling / stubborn hands. By recasting the chorus as personal declaration, the song undergoes a structural transformation that freedom in Bucharest deliberately withholds. That companion song ends in a question. This one ends in a verb, I will write. The choice to act imperfectly with trembling hands is the resolution. From the churches to the trams / from the hills to dirty rivers / let it live in what we choose / not in someone else's plans. The geographic sweep, churches, trams, hills, rivers, maps liberty across the entire texture of Romanian life, from the sacred to the mundane, from the elevated to the impure, dirty rivers. Liberty is not reserved for monuments or official spaces. It must inhabit daily life completely. The closing line, not in someone else's plans, is the album's most direct statement of political self-determination. Comparative analysis. The two songs as a diptych. The two songs are clearly designed as companion pieces, similar opening imagery, the same generational female voice of survival wisdom, parallel chorus architectures, and the same core argument, but they arrive at different emotional destinations. Freedom in Bucharest asks whether liberation happened. Liberty in Bucharest decides to make it happen anyway. Thematic synthesis. The album's conceptual sophistication lies in its refusal to locate oppression in any single political system. Communism and Western liberal capitalism are both placed in the dock, not as moral equivalents, but as successive systems that failed to deliver genuine self-determination to ordinary Romanians. The enemy is not the hammer and sickle or the ring of stars, but the structural condition in which someone else always holds the deed to your life. What Maestro Cerci is constructing across this album is a popular philosophy of liberty rooted in lived experience rather than academic theory. The kind of political understanding that comes not from Locke or Hayek but from bread lines, whispered warnings, cheap champagne, and crumbling blocks. It is all the more powerful for that. The trembling hands that write on walls at the end of liberty in Bucharest are not a metaphor for revolution. They are a metaphor for the only kind of freedom that cannot be administered, branded, or revoked. The freedom to insist in your own voice on your own terms that you are here and you matter and you will not be filed away.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to this week's episode of the Songs for Democracy podcast. We hope you subscribe to this podcast and check out our other episodes as well as articles via our official website, songsfordemocracy.com. Our comments section below this episode includes a variety of helpful links and information as well. Have a wonderful week ahead.